summaries. I want to call to order tonight's meeting. First, a couple items around reorganization. Election of chairman for the zoning board for 2024. Anybody want a nomination?
Nominate Jeff Holmberg.
Second.
Vote.
Aye.
An election of secretary for 2024. I'll nominate Dave Ryder. Next order was to call approval of minutes from the previous meetings we had in 2023. Wanted to see if we could get a vote on the approval of the minutes from the March 20th, 2023 meeting. Make a motion to vote.
Make a motion to approve.
Approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approval of minutes from the June 26th, 2023 meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Vote. Aye.
Aye.
And approval of minutes from the August 21st, 2023 meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Vote. Aye.
Aye.
So all the minutes were approved. And with that, I'll turn it over to our solicitor.
Very good, thank you. The zoning hearing, well, first of all, let me identify myself. I'm Christopher Hartman. I'm the solicitor for the zoning hearing board here in Honeybrook Township. Our names are up here. The chairman's just been elected, Jeff Emberger, vice chair David Rogers, and member Arlene O'Lear. The three of them will be making decisions tonight. There are three applications that the board is going to consider tonight, and the hearings will proceed in the following fashion. The first hearing will be the application of Willard Sunstein. The second application that the board will hear will be the application of Amos Esh. And the third application will be the one received from Chester County Solid Waste Authority. So I ask for your patience tonight as we work through these hearings, and each of you will have your turn. There's not a lot of people in the audience tonight, so I'm anticipating that it shouldn't be a long time to get through each of these hearings, but it will take a little while. So thank you for your patience. With that, let me go through some of the administrative stuff that we need to cover as we go through each of these hearings. As to our first application, this is the place and time designated by notice to consider the application of William Sunstein for a special exception pursuant to section 27-402B5 of the Honeybrook Township zoning ordinance as amended to permit the creation of a private cemetery for 2 graves on the property, and for a variance from section 27-1016B1A of the zoning ordinance in order to permit the cemetery use without the submission of a land development plan. The property which is the subject of the application for the above special exception and variance is located at 890 Cupola Road, being tax parcel number 22-8-46. The property is located in the neighborhood residential NR zoning district of Honeybrook Township. Before going any further, I would like to identify any person present who wishes to be recognized by the zoning hearing board as a party to this hearing. Party status will give you the right to call witnesses and to appeal the decision of the zoning hearing board. The applicant will be recognized as a party, and the township is always automatically recognized as a party. Before I get into the applicant's identification as a party, I want to look to the rest of the room and ask if there's anyone else present here tonight who wishes to be a party to this hearing. I see no indication of that. So it appears that the applicant and the township will be the only parties to this hearing, and this would be an appropriate time for the man known as Willard Sunstein to explain his jurisdictional position. We're not going to get into the hearing yet, but I just want the board to briefly hear how you identify yourself. Would you, but before you do that, I want to ask you to be sworn so that this is part of the official record. Would you be willing to be sworn?
I am a man who lives by faith with God, and my word is my word.
Would you, well, what we often do with people who have a strong spiritual orientation is we ask them to affirm their testimony rather than take an oath. Would you be willing to affirm your testimony?
I affirm that my word is true.
Okay. I will accept that as an affirmation of your testimony tonight. So if you want to speak about your...
I'll just briefly mention, I'm a living man. I'm not a legal fiction. Willard Sunstein is a legal fiction that was created at my birth. I stand in God's kingdom. I stand with God. And I'm visiting at this jurisdiction. And I have full powers to speak and, how did one say, signature authority, etc., for the party known as Willard Sunstein. And I have his identification papers, his legal fiction, Willard Sunstein, and I'm ready to do that which is necessary so that we can have a privilege granted to that party which enables us to exercise the rights of our religion, which has been hindered so far. That's basically
Thank you.
all I have to say.
Does the board have any questions? I interpret the statement that we've just read, that the gentleman before us has the ability to speak on behalf of Willard Sunstein and to act on behalf of Willard Sunstein, and I think we can accept that in order to conduct our official business regarding the application that's been submitted. Is that acceptable to the board?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, all of you.
All right, thank you. All right, I have to complete my introductory business before we get into the testimony. Public notice of this hearing was duly advertised in the Daily Local on February 6 and February 13, 2024. Adjoining property owners were notified by mail of this hearing on February 5, 2024. Notice of this hearing was posted on the property by Edgar Nelson, Honeybrook Township Zoning Officer, on February 14, 2024. At this time, the board offers the following exhibits which have been pre-marked to be made part of the record. Exhibit 1 is the application of William Sunstein for the property located at 890 Cupola Road, Honeybrook Township, Chester County, Pennsylvania. Exhibit 2 is an addendum to that application which was submitted by the applicant. Exhibit 3 is a notice of tonight's hearing. Exhibit 4 is the proof of publication of the notice in the Daily Local. Exhibit 5 is an affidavit of service by mail regarding those persons who received notice of this hearing by mail. Exhibit 6 is an affidavit of the posting of the property with the notice of tonight's hearing. Exhibit 7 is a letter from Technicon dated January 12, 2024, providing comments in response to the special exception application of William Sunstein. Exhibit 8 is a letter of the Board of Supervisors dated February 16, 2024. Actually, let me correct that. It is a letter of the Planning Commission of Honeybrook Township, not the Board of Supervisors, dated February 16, 2024, communicating the position of support on the special exception request from section 27-402B5, taking the position of support on the variance request from section 27-1016B1A, as well as comments in response to the letter from Technicon dated January 12, 2024. And Exhibit 9, which will be made part of the record but is not specifically marked, would be the zoning ordinance of Honeybrook Township. Are there any objections to any of those exhibits? Mr. McAvoy or Mr. Sunstein, for purposes of this
However you
hearing?
wish, Willard would be, I think, more appropriate. And I've noticed occasionally a little slip, you say Willard.
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry.
clear you're referring to that party.
Okay.
And I am speaking for that party, so if you wish to refer to me as Mr. Sunstein, we know my statement that I'm not identified with that party, so I can also accept that under that
Okay.
comprehension.
Thank you. So you have no objection to any of the exhibits?
I didn't follow any of all of that, but I don't have any
Just-
objections. I'm sure it's the formalities to make this work.
It is a formality. Thank you. With that, I want to remind Willard that you have affirmed that you're going to tell the truth this evening. And is that correct? You are going to tell the truth to the board?
Yes, and in all circumstances, everywhere I want.
Very good. So, we're now ready to talk about your application. And is it true that you are seeking permission from the township to create a place for the burial of yourself and your wife who has passed on the property?
I wouldn't want to bury any living man or woman, and I'm a living man, so I certainly don't want to have permission to bury myself. But the bodily remains, the fleshly remains of my wife, my beloved, and also fleshly remains, should they be able to be found with my body at some point, then yes, I do want it so that there would be no hindrances for this to be done within the allotted space. And we're seeking to get this done because of the forces against us, even though I'm quite convinced as a living man, also under the law of Pennsylvania, that we have the right to this, and the regulations have been falsely interpreted and applied. So we're going through this so that we get the ability through this privilege to do such, yes.
Okay, very good. And does your application specifically identify the location where these burials, either now or in the
Yes.
future, would occur?
Yes,
Okay.
and
And
that's exactly where the soil analysis was done with the 6-foot hole.
right, and so you're aware that there is some soil quality conditions in the township zoning ordinance,
Yes, I know that.
and you had a soil test conducted, and is it true that that test was submitted to the township?
Yes,
And one of the letters I referred to from the township engineer confirms that the soils are acceptable for the use that you are seeking approval for. Is that your understanding?
that's my comprehension.
Okay. And do you also understand that there is a requirement that, let me make sure I use the right words for this. The burial must be at least 3 feet below the surface of the ground. Do you understand that
That's my
requirement?
comprehension, and that's the intention and the whole, what I'm able to, yes.
All right, and is it also your understanding that, or your comprehension,
Thank you.
that the monument may not be greater than 6 feet?
Yes, we don't have any intention to have anything to do with it.
Okay. Is it also your comprehension that it is a requirement of the township ordinance that you enter into a maintenance agreement?
That's exactly the way we comprehend it, and though I find it a ridiculous, superfluous situation, there's no problem in entering into such a thing for the parties involved. Yes, it's been already done.
And I believe you were in attendance at the planning commission meeting where your application was discussed, is that correct?
Yes.
And at that planning commission meeting, my understanding is that the planning commission recommended to the zoning hearing board that there be a condition attached to the approval of this application if the zoning hearing board chooses to grant the application, that the maintenance agreement, which is required by the ordinance, include a meets and bounds description of the location of the burial area. Is it your comprehension that that was a recommendation to the zoning hearing board from the planning commission?
I actually don't have totally accurate recollection in this regard, but it doesn't come to mind, and so that would be an error.
Okay. Does the board have any questions about what I described? I just want to be clear that we're all with an understanding that there are certain legal requirements if a cemetery is approved. Those are items that I've just reviewed about the soils being acceptable. There's been confirmation of that. The burial depth is required, and Willard has confirmed that he would meet that requirement. And so if we don't make any exceptions to those requirements, they will be required if you say a cemetery is okay. But if you want to require, as part of that maintenance agreement requirement that's in the ordinance already, that he include a meets and bounds description of the burial area, you would have to make that part of your decision.
That's just an exact location.
Yeah, and again, my expectation is the township's going to record that agreement, and so if the meets and bounds description of the burial area is included in the maintenance agreement, and the maintenance agreement is recorded, there will be forever a record in the Chester County Courthouse about exactly where these burials have occurred. And I think that's the intention of the planning commission. Are there any questions about that? Does everyone know what a meets and bounds description is? It would be basically a surveyed location to create a scientifically accurate location. Okay. I think those are the key items that are required under the cemetery regulations of the township ordinance. There are a couple of additional things I want to ask you, Willard, based on the standards for approval of a special exception. And that is that that the proposed use that you are seeking approval for tonight will be consistent with the character of the neighborhood in which the property is located, and will not substantially impair, alter, or detract from the use of surrounding properties or from the character of the neighborhood. Is that
Absolutely, that fits very well. And we've also spoken with both of the close neighbors, the Fitchleys, who are across the street, directly across, and the other ones who are diagonally across, Stoltzfus, and they don't see why there's such a big of a role involved with all this. They both would have wished we could just have gone forward.
Thank you. Also, there is a requirement for the board to consider whether the special exception serves the health, safety, welfare, and best interests of the township. Do you have any thoughts about whether or not this application you have submitted would promote the health, safety, welfare, and best interests of the township or not?
I think that not only does it promote it, having it hindered so long is horribly against the best interests of the township. The best interests of the township are not furthered by hindering people's religious practice. That is a horrible, horrible travesty that goes against the moral fiber on which our whole society and civilization is based.
Thank you. Also, my understanding from the application is that there would not be any new driveway or parking or any other access point created to the property as a result of the installation of
Correct, yes.
burial area. Okay, thank you. There is one more aspect that we need to talk about with regard to your application, and that is that the zoning ordinance requires the submission and approval by the township of a land development plan when a cemetery is proposed. And that is a literal requirement of the ordinance. However, Willard has asked for a variance to be excused from that requirement. It is my opinion that for the type of cemetery which Willard is seeking approval for, that would be an inapplicable regulation just because of the limited scope and impact on the property. But that is something for the board to decide. Does the board have any questions about that? Okay. Willard, do you have any comments about the requirement of the ordinance for a land development plan to be submitted to the township and approved?
I think it's a very silly requirement of the ordinance at all. I could understand the requirement for a cemetery development plan, but for the development plan for the whole land, I don't see why there'd be any reason. We've got 10 acres in this case, and the cemetery official bounds will be 12 by 12 or 9 by 9, something like that. And to have a whole development plan for this purpose doesn't make a little bit of sense. It's just nonsense in this case, anyway.
All right, thank you. Does the board have any questions for Willard about his application or any of the legal issues that I've raised? No?
I have a question, just a basic question. How long have you lived at this residency?
We moved in 2004.
So if I'm understanding this map correctly, if we drive down Tupelo Road, which I'm a farmer in the Hunterbrook area here, I go down Tupelo Road several times a year. It appears to me that there's signs like in plastic bags on trees along Tupelo Road. Is that your property?
You mean the no trespassing signs?
Is that what it is, no trespassing signs?
There are some signs of that nature, and those are set up by Bill Smith. He owns land that's on the other side of the stream also, and more upstream from our property, he owns land that crosses the stream. And so he has some signs up there that are no trespassing.
So that's not indeed your land then?
No, we don't have any signs up of that nature.
I'm going to ask a question, just because this map is not, I don't know what the blurry picture is, but how close is this proposed cemetery to the water right there?
To the water, I don't know, we didn't even measure that, that wasn't given. The soil engineer didn't think that was at all a question. It was sufficiently far away and not where anything would go.
It never floods at your house?
Not at the house, no, and certainly not up there, that's up at a higher level.
Where the proposed cemetery is?
Yes,
Than the house?
it's up at a whole other level,
Higher than the house?
yes. And we've never had water reach the house. And as a matter of fact, the 100-year floodplain, according to the survey that was done by the official engineering company that designed the bridge, shows the 100-year floodplain for the waters is something like a full meter underneath the bottom of the bridge.
If I may, refer to Exhibit 8, which is the February 16, 2024 letter from Technicon, the township engineer. That letter includes the following statements. The applicant had a soil analysis conducted by a qualified soil scientist, and the soil probe found that the soils in the vicinity of the burial sites were not indicative of alluvial soils or HA Hatboro silt loam as indicated on the soil mapping. Therefore, this area does not constitute floodplain per the Honeybrook Township zoning or floodplain ordinances, and no relief relative to these sections is required. Additionally, the soil study showed that the required 3 feet from grade level to the burial vault can be provided. The soil study also confirmed that the burial vaults will not intrude on the seasonal high water table and do not pose a potential for groundwater contamination where proposed. Are there any more questions from the board? Okay, I'm going to cautiously ask you if there's any final word that you might have, Willard.
I just had a little technical question. Meets and bounds, they're generally given with lengths and directions. Is there something in the legal ease that requires the meets and bounds to be done by a surveyor? Or can I, for example, because there is a survey thing that was put in by the engineers for the bridge, actually about, I don't know, not that far, I'd say less than 10 feet probably from where the cemetery is, and I could just measure with a compass and a tape and put in the pointers, put in the markers for the corners of the cemetery and measure exactly and determine the meets and bounds? Or do I have to get an official surveyor to please the regulatory powers that be in this regard?
My recommendation, and you're not going to like this, is that the board require a surveyed meets and bounds description. And the reason being that, your measurements and any stakes that you might install would be appropriate for the current time period. This situation is going to persist for an indefinite, if not permanent, period of time, in which case the information needs to be recorded in a reliable fashion so that these burial locations can be identified by future owners of the property. And so I know there's a matter of opinion about what is necessary, but my recommendation...
Another $1,000.
My recommendation to the board is that the board require what the planning commission recommended, which is a meets and bounds description, to be made part of the agreement. Now, the terms of that agreement are subject to the approval of the township solicitor, so you'll need to work with the township administration on the completion of that agreement.
And I would like to make a request of the zoning board members that if you could, maybe you're not permitted to do it officially, but to put in a personal request or recommendation that the township administration would not delay the moving of the vault with my wife's body in it till the survey's done, until these other things are done. But that a certain time frame be given, a reasonable time frame for them to all be done. And the okay would be given to the funeral home so that the vault would be moved. So that within 30 days, 60 days or something, we have all the, all the I's dotted and T's crossed and everything's all completed. This would be a really, really important. me if the township administration could do that. They do have the flexibility for it if they wish, and I think your personal recommendation or wishes could carry some weight. They might be more moved to not slow things down.
Thank you. Does that conclude your statement to the board?
Yes, that concludes everything that comes to my mind.
Unless there are any other questions from the board, I would recommend that we accept the exhibits that have been presented, which are all township exhibits, and close the record on this hearing. Is that agreeable to the board?
Yes.
Okay, very good. With that having been said, does the board have any wish to ask me any legal questions or deliberate in executive session about this matter? Or are you ready to take action as a decision on this matter at this time? Okay, we're going to have a very brief recess for an executive session, and we'll be right back.
Thank you folks for your patience. Does it say Williams?
That's why you kept saying.
Oh, is that Willard? William is no, I wonder where William is. Page one is Willard.
I don't notice that they sent out.
Some other pages, it's, oh, something.
That they print in the newspapers.
Oh, that's what.
Is that the way out, that's the ARD?
Yes.
That's why he was saying that.
Yep, there's where it is. No wonder. So Christie typed it up. Very,
He may have been his secretary.
yeah, that's what I was doing, Christie.
And Mr. Hartman's secretary.
Oh,
He may have been.
I figure Christie typed it up because her name's on it. presume that's not a big deal. Hope it's not a big deal.
Have the address.
I presume you can type there much quicker than even the Dorsey or whatever it is typing format. The QWERTY is really slow. They made it to slow people down because the machines weren't fast enough. So they arranged the letters and they made it harder to type. And I think it was Dorsey was the name. Some guy in Europe somewhere, as we had faster typewriter, came up with another system, which is a lot faster. But I presume this is a lot faster because you have less keys.
Yeah, I write words at the top, that's letter.
But words in it now.
The phrases and the parts of words.
Wow. And is that by hitting multiple keys at the same time? So you've got to know key combinations that mean certain words that are more frequent.
Short sounds.
I'm afraid. Oh, wow. That's something.
Yeah.
So that goes much faster than stenograph. If the stenograph machine must go faster than stenograph, the stenographic just as fast.
They do the same thing. Stenograph and the typer. They work on the same. Are you talking about pen writer?
Yeah, when people write in pen,
They're called pen writers. I've never actually experienced somebody that does that. But when I started the Chester County Courthouse 35 years ago, my boss worked with some pen writers still. They weren't still there, he started.
right?
Chester County Chester County was a lot smaller back then.
Right. Now, we've grown like crazy. You also see what you type as you type it, I guess.
The new machine, they just came out of that, and all our upgrade happened in.
Does it also do an audio recording for somehow redundancy? Does that also go on 840?
That is something you really
So you've got a redundancy for some clarity, because I presume, even though your books must be really, really good, there must be occasional mistakes.
Biggest mistakes when people don't speak clearly, people who talk at the hospital.
Right. You get pretty good at what you do when you do it all the
I
time.
have a lot of, it's amazing to me how many people with accents I take in. It's just ridiculous.
An accent that's hard to comprehend.
Very hard to do.
And is it okay comprehending me?
You do, but I'm glad, yeah, we were fine. It's awesome that you need to, funny that Indian accents.
Very strong accent. Yes.
Yes, it would be quite intense too.
I think it's nice when people keep their original language, but it's also nice when they learn the mother tongue here. But it's not easy. English is really difficult.
Even when they do want to their accent is
It's
still
just,
tough.
I had a professor once in college. He was Chinese. I could not understand. So nobody else could.
I had a calculator.
This was also a math class, but I didn't have any problems because I knew the math, you know, I could learn the math. But he was a number that, in terms of trying to understand. Do they usually take this long?
Sometimes they do it right there, sometimes they take a while.
I wonder why they have to have a recess.
The zoning hearing board is going to go back on record at this time after its executive session. And based on the discussion that the board had in executive session, I'm going to recommend a motion to the board, and if the board agrees with that recommendation, you can make motions to approve. So the recommended motion is to approve the special exception application for a cemetery for the property at 890 Cupola Road for 2 grades only, and to grant the variance which would eliminate the need for a land development plan for that 2-grade cemetery with the following conditions: that the applicant be required to enter into a maintenance agreement with the township satisfactory to the township solicitor, including a meets and bounds legal description of the location where the cemetery will be existing, that all required permits and approvals for the cemetery be obtained by the applicant, that the applicant would comply with all applicable ordinances and regulations of Honeybrook Township except as modified by this decision, and that the use of the property regarding a cemetery shall be consistent with the testimony that was presented to the zoning hearing board. And in addition to that decision, with those conditions, the recommended motion would include a statement to the Township of Honeybrook to request that the Township work with the applicant to develop the necessary maintenance agreement within a reasonable period of time. That is the recommended motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion. All
Aye.
in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. So that is the decision on this application. The Township Zoning Hearing Board has a duty to issue its written decision within 45 days of tonight's hearing, but I anticipate it will be a much shorter time than that. If any party, in this case it would be Willard, is unhappy with that written decision, you would have the right within 30 days of the issuance of the written decision to appeal that decision to the Chester County Court of Common Pleas. Do you have any questions, Willard?
A couple little questions, because it's really a very strong matter of our hearts. The removal of the vault with my wife's body not be further delayed, that somehow some kind of personal recommendation could be made that the township could give somehow some word to the funeral home saying it's okay to do so while we work out getting everything formalized. That would be something that we would then do very, very quickly. I'm trying to get it, I don't want any delays here. I will make sure the applicant will do everything within standard reasons, which that I expect to be, so we get everything completed. And we get the meets and bounds done, get the survey and everything else. But, you know, this could take a while. Also, you said the formal written thing might take a while, and every day is torture. It's really, really torture. So I really hope that it's possible to give a personal recommendation that the township exercise their authority to have a little bit of working together here, just like they do if somebody happens to have a shed that's a little bit bigger, so that requires a permit, and the person probably didn't require a permit, the township's probably not going to say tear it down, but we go through and get the permit application and get it all complete. There's a little bit of working together, people with hearts and minds, and I would hope you could give that kind of recommendation, because I think, you know, two of the supervisors seem very, very amenable to trying to work with me. There's one that didn't seem so, and I don't think the manager's so inclined. And a recommendation might help move them to get things to go faster.
Well, I'm looking to the board. I don't know if the board has anything further to say about this, but the motion that the board just approved does include a request to the township to enter into a maintenance agreement with you within a reasonable period of time. And my opinion on this is that the township is not emotionally invested in this the way that you are. And the township needs to look at the long-term impact of this decision on the community And that's not the same point of view that you have. And so we have a difference of opinion, so to speak, about what the priority needs to be. But
The township can see, the people working in the township can see how much effort we put into improving the property, all the landscaping we've done through the years, just an enormous amount of effort, expense, and this is going to be the most holy place on the property. It's the most sacred, it's certainly going to be looked after. And I could very quickly sign something tomorrow with the manager and say, we'll get the meets and bounds, really very quickly on it. And we're willing to get this registered as soon as we have the meets and bounds, or beforehand with temporary meets and bounds, or whatever they want. But so the thing isn't delayed, and it would sound very different if the recommendation, maybe just a personal recommendation from the board, not an official, but just from you as individuals, Jeff and Darlene and David, just to tell them, try and work with God's speed so that the vault move can be done.
well,
That's what I really want.
well, I think if each of them in their individual capacity can make their own decision about whether or not they reach out to the township about that. But again, from an official standpoint, in terms of upholding the intent of the regulations, which I think is the duty of the zoning hearing board, it's important to recognize that what the township puts into place has to survive the test of time. And what I mean by that is to make sure that there is in place a maintenance agreement and a proper identification of the location of the cemetery, so that 100 years from now, 200 years from now, that there has been a process put in place that will protect the integrity of the cemetery, and that the township has done a good job in making sure that the cemetery that you wish to create will be properly maintained forever. So I know that you are in a great hurry to
And there's a total alignment of the interests here, of course. It's not that, hey, I want to do some profit-making scheme that would be against the township. No, our interests are totally aligned with the maintenance, totally aligned with making this aesthetically beautiful. And of course, it's going to be very clearly marked by the gravestone, and that would also indicate generally where it is, but there's total agreement in terms of marking where the boundaries are, et cetera, and just saying something that, it's not that the township has to be super careful that this rascal of a guy will do something that's against the township interests. Our interests go in the same direction as the township, but much, much further. Much, much, much further in terms of how this will be looked at. So I think it would be very reasonable to have something recognized that this isn't slowed down further, isn't delayed.
Is there anything further the board wants to say about this tonight?
I mean, as far as us personally, as far as I'm concerned, and correct me if I'm wrong from a legal standpoint, but I can call the township tomorrow and say, we heard Willard's testimony, we would like for you to go as fast as you can, and I don't have a problem doing that, but they're still under bounds of obligation. Just because I suggest that they go fast doesn't 100% mean that they're going to go any faster than they would not normally go. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, they have to make their own decision about how they're going to administer the decision that you have made tonight.
If you want me to contact them and say, hey, can you go as fast as you can?
I would really appreciate that. I would also appreciate if somehow something can be done that You know, it could easily be written that, hey, they will give approval to the funeral home to have the move, and if we don't get all these things worked out within 40 days, 60 days or something, then the vault has to be moved away again. You know, one could put in some kind of security so that they would definitely get it done, but still it doesn't delay
Well, I think
what we need to do.
I think your next step is going to have to be to talk to the township about the question that you've raised about how to proceed to get the burial done as expeditiously as possible. I think this board has done everything it can, and you've heard David indicate a willingness to contact the township,
Thank you, David.
which is in his individual capacity, but I think we've done everything we can tonight
Well,
on this
I
matter.
want to thank all of you for your willingness to work with me in this unusual case, also how unusually I present myself. I do have gratitude to all of you. I do look forward to a world where we can move much more with love and comprehension and working together than with mechanically frozen regulations that somehow take a higher priority than reasoning and working with the situation when there's emergencies.
And I believe, I mean, we all as elected officials on the township, we're all compassionate humans too. You know, we see your pain, and I'm sure this will carry on tomorrow when you contact the township to tell them of our decision. You know, they'll understand your pain. We'll be compassionate.
It'd be nice if they understand not just the pain, but understand that the township has to operate underneath the Pennsylvania Constitution, which says very, very clearly that religious practices are not to be hindered. And this is very clear within all sorts of cases. A township has to have a compelling interest to go against anything constitutional, very strong compelling interest. And the very fact that there are all sorts of pets buried all the time, all over the place in the township. The cemetery regulation says where human or animal remains are buried is a cemetery, and the township doesn't require any cemetery permits, even for horses, multiple dogs buried on properties. But they're requiring it in this case before the burial actually happens here. That is not a compelling interest. There's also many townships with no cemetery regulations. And there just isn't a compelling interest. So I think the township really is compelled to abide by the Constitution first in how it applies the regulation. And I think there would be leeway here because the applicant is working very cooperatively with the township for the permit, that they could then interpret the regulations enforcement in such a way that it wouldn't hinder the religious practice.
Well, thank you for your comments. I think you've presented a lot of thought-provoking information to the zoning board. But I think at this point, this matter is in the hands of the township to take action. This board has given you permission to proceed with the burial on your property, but you must do so in accordance with the township regulations as far as this board is concerned. But the administration of those regulations by the township is something that you can discuss with the township.
Yes.
That's
So I'll
outside
do that
of,
then tomorrow morning.
that's outside of the authority of this board.
Well, I thank you very, very much, each and all of you. And also thank everybody else for your patience dealing with all of you for the authority.
Thank you, Willard.
Thank you, Chris, very much.
Is the board ready to move on to hearing number 2? Okay, thank you very much. We are now going to proceed with the application of Amos Esh. And as I did with the initial hearing, I made an announcement that this is the place and time designated by notice to consider the application of Amos Esh for variances from sections 27-1033H10A and 27-1703A6 of the Huntingburg Township zoning ordinance as amended to permit the construction of a woodworking facility to be operated as a rural occupation secondary to the principal residential use permitted on the property when the proposed building coverage exceeds 5,000 square feet and proposed impervious cover exceeds 5%. The property which is the subject of the application for the above variances is located at 1225 Beaver Dam Road, tax parcel number 22-10-9.3. The property is located in the agricultural A zoning district of Huntingburg Township. See, the applicant is here. Do you wish to enter an appearance on behalf of the applicant? Identify yourself.
Yes, I'm John Williamson, and senior consultant with Team Ag.
Thank you, John. And is there any other person present here tonight who wishes to be a party to this hearing? That would be in addition to the applicant and the township, and persons who are recognized by the zoning hearing board as a party have the right to call witnesses and to appeal the decision of the zoning hearing board. Is there anyone present here other than the applicant who wishes to be recognized? I see no indication of that. So the applicant and the township will be the only parties. Anyone who seeks to offer evidence regarding this matter will be required to either be sworn or to affirm their testimony. Public notice of this hearing was duly advertised in the Daily Local on February 6th and February 13, 2024. Adjoining property owners were notified by mail of this hearing on February 5, 2024. Notice of this hearing was posted on the property by Edgar Nelson, zoning officer, on February 14, 2024. At this time, the board offers the following exhibits into evidence. All these exhibits have been pre-marked. Exhibit 1 is the application of Amos Esh for the property located at 1225 Beaver Dam Road, Huntingburg Township, Chester County, Pennsylvania. Exhibit 2 is a copy of the notice of the hearing, tonight's hearing. Exhibit 3 is a proof of publication of the notice in the Daily Local. Exhibit 4 is an affidavit of the service by mail of persons who were sent notice by mail. Exhibit 5 is an affidavit of the posting of the notice on the property. Exhibit 6 is a letter of the Board of Supervisors of Huntingburg Township dated February 15, 2024, taking the position of support on the variance request. And Exhibit 7 will be the Huntingburg Township zoning ordinance as amended. Is there any objection to any of those exhibits? Okay, no indication of any objection. With that, let's move into the testimony. First question, as always, is the owner of the property present? Mr. Esh, are you Mr. Esh? Okay. Are you willing to either swear or to affirm your testimony tonight? Okay. Do you want to do your spiel with the... Yeah, let's do both.
I'll do you one at a time, sir. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yeah, I affirm.
You affirm? You agree to it, raise your right hand now. Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. So, sir, you said your name is Amos Esh, and are you the owner of the property? Okay. Which one of you wants to tell the board about what the project is on the property?
Well, I'll go ahead and get started.
Okay.
And then after that, Mr. Esh can answer any questions you may have.
Very good.
But basically, Mr. Esh owns the property. It's a little over 15 acres on Beaver Dam Road. The drawings that you have show the property. Basically, there's a stream, and then the houses and barns are in the back. And he proposes to build a woodworking shop here for making cabinets. He's already been in business for how many years? Doing elsewhere? About 20 years, so he knows what he's doing. According to the ordinance, There are two issues that he doesn't comply with, and we're asking for variances, and we call these de minimis variances because it's just a small amount. One of them is with the lot size of 15 acres, you're allowed a rural occupation of 5,000 square feet. He needs a little more than that, so another 354 square feet in addition, 384 square feet in addition to that 5,000. So we're asking for a request for that would be approved. And then the total lot coverage for this ag district is only 5%. And we're requesting, again, it's just a slight addition to that to allow up to 5.5% of lot coverage. And otherwise, he meets all the other conditions or all the standards for a rural occupation, which would be permitted usually in the agricultural zoning district. So I guess that's all I have to offer. We'll take questions.
Is there anything about the property that the board should understand that, that creates a hardship in terms of the difficulty of using the property, or developing the property, any other physical constraints on the property in any way?
Well, the physical constraints in the sense that you have a stream down at the south part of the property, and so and wetlands. So really, it's only this portion that can be developed.
Okay, so the buildings must be up on higher ground.
Yes, it's up on the higher ground, and it's actually away from the road.
That impervious coverage limitation, did that calculation require the exclusion of those environmentally sensitive areas? I don't know the answer to that.
No,
It was
total.
It was on the gross area, okay.
There seems to be a pond in behind the house. What is that, a circle area? Is that a pond, or what is that? How much coverage of land does that take up?
Go back, you mean on the northern part?
Yes, sir.
Yes, there's a pond.
That's a quarter acre pond. And then it looks like a stream flows into it, then a pond, and then an outflow of a stream also.
Right, where the stream kind of goes around there.
You're not gonna have any, like, paints or anything?
Anyway.
Paint?
Yeah.
Is that, it'll go through all proper, like, regulation, ventilation and everything?
Correct.
Is there already a business running here? Is there already a business on that property?
No.
Do you rent that out for picnics and so forth? Is that the property next to you?
That property's next up.
And what about, that's a pretty big piece, that's 5,000 square feet, a large building. What about noise emitting, from the building?
Where the diesel room would be in
Diesel, I'm sorry.
diesel room.
A room for the diesel
Power
generator.
room.
Is that enclosed room?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you have a dust collection system? There would be a dust
Yeah, there
collection.
would be that.
So does that emit noise?
Yeah.
The neighbor's pretty close there, you're right on that borderline, right?
Right.
So there'd be no noise emitted from
There
the
would be
property?
some noise, yeah.
Because there is regulations, I believe, for the township for.
In the zoning ordinance, you're
You
right.
can't emit any noise, can't leave the property, I believe.
Are you gonna have multiple people working there in addition to yourself, or?
So far, it's just me, it's just family, so far.
And, a lot, traffic deliveries or anything?
Well, we have some deliveries,
How often do you think that would be?
maybe once every 2 weeks or something like
And would you be storing anything outside?
that. No.
Everything would be inside? Do you already run a business, or you work for somebody now,
No, I have it.
somewhere else?
Yeah, I was curious about that too. you've been in business making cabinets already. Are you working for somebody else at another location, or do you have your business at another location and you're relocating it back to this property, or what's going on?
I would like to relocate.
Okay.
And will you have any signage or anything? Sign?
I'd like to have a small sign just so that every people can see where it's at.
Okay, but it will follow the regulations and
We
everything.
follow the sign regulations of the ordinance.
There'll be like no retail sales here?
We don't know.
So it's all wholesale.
Well, basically, how would you call it? We deal with homeowners.
So you're selling directly to the homeowner?
Yeah.
So it's retail. Are they coming to your store, or are you going to them?
No, I got it.
If the board were to grant your application, the size of your building is based on being greater than 15 acres, and you are just a hair over 15 acres. So if the board were to say that you can't subdivide your property without obtaining additional variance approval from the zoning hearing board to allow that, is that something that you would accept? I think it's required by the ordinance, but I just want to see what your reaction is to that.
Not quite following.
In the home occupation regulations, or for a rural occupation, okay. The maximum building coverage, which is defined as the principal building square feet, if you have 3 to 5 acres, you can have a 2,000 square foot building. If you have 5 to 10 acres, you can have a 3,000 square foot building. If you have 10 to 15 acres, you can have 4,000 square feet. If you're 15 to 20, 5,000. If you're greater than 20, 6,000. So that means that you're just barely over that 15-acre requirement that allows you to have 5,000. And you're already asking to be a little bit bigger than that. So I think it would be appropriate if the zoning hearing board grants your application that it include a statement that there could not be any subdivision of your property without a variance being granted by the zoning hearing board. Because I think that's true, but I just want you to be basically made aware of that through the decision. And do you understand that? Mr. Williams?
Well, I just have a quick, I think that's a reasonable request. But let's say if you were to withdraw that rural occupation and then, that building could be used as a farm or something like that, that wouldn't necessarily be part.
That's a very good thought. If the rural occupation goes away,
Yeah,
the employees go away, the business activity goes away, and something else goes in that's permitted, that is not subject to that 5,000, 15-acre rule, yeah, that could be. So, I don't know what the board's going to do with your application. It would be tied to the continuation of the rural occupation would only be allowed if you didn't subdivide the property, but if you got rid of the rural occupation, then you'd be subject to whatever other rules might apply. Do you follow me on that? Yeah, okay. All right.
yeah, he agrees.
I think it's a reasonable request.
Okay.
And just another question, so you're like 384 feet over, right, the building? You really, for this to be viable, you need those additional 384 feet?
Well, he's been operating a woodworking business already, and I asked that question too when we got on. I said, why do you want to go before the zoning hearing board? And Mr. S said, yeah, I really need that space, so.
What I'm asking actually is, most of that space, additional space is office.
Yeah. And the office has to be attached to the building but separate because, you know, the noise and that kind of thing, that's within the building.
I just wanted to see what the noise regulation is.
It's, the 27, 10, 33. It's F.
1033, yeah.
It's on F.
That's a different thing. F is no impact on occupations.
No, performance standards. Performance standards.
I'm
Home
looking,
occupation may not use any equipment or process that creates noise, vibration, glare, fumes, odors, or electrical interference, including interference with radio or television reception, detectable by a neighborhood.
I think that
okay. So, have you shown him that section or?
Yeah.
Yeah, what Darlene is bringing to our attention is a section of the zoning ordinance that applies to rural occupations, such as what you're proposing, that is called performance standards, and it says the home occupation may not use any equipment or process that creates noise, vibration, glare, fumes, odors, or electrical interference, including interference with radio or television reception that is detectable in the neighborhood. Standards for compliance shall be those found in Part 9 general regulations of this chapter. So the bottom line is that by initiating this use at your property under the rural occupation regulations, you are going to be subject to noise regulations. So please be aware of that and be prepared to comply with the township standards on that. And obviously, this is intended to protect the neighbors from what you're doing on your property. The shape of your property is long and narrow, and so even though it's over 15 acres in size, it's not that far to the left and the right to your neighbor's property. So I think the noise concern is a legitimate one, and one that you're going to need to be prepared to handle as you operate your business. So there is no offer here to give you any relief from the noise regulations that apply to your property. Is that understood? Okay. All right. Are there any other questions or comments from the board?
Do you share a driveway with your neighbor? I mean, coming off of Beaver Dam, is that shared at the bottom of the road level?
Is
Yes,
yeah, do you share it?
well, it's, the property line is like half and half.
But I mean, you both use the same, coming off of Beaver Dam. Are they aware of the increase in traffic or, you know, so forth?
Yes, they are.
There is an easement for that shared driveway. I saw that in the plan set that was submitted with the application. There's a copy of the subdivision plan. It created your lot from, I don't know, was that almost 20 years ago? And there is a shared driveway easement shown on that recorded subdivision plan. Any other questions from the board? Anything you would like to offer, Mr. Esh? Okay, Mr. Williamson, anything further?
No, thank you.
Okay. Do you, does the board wish to have another brief recess to discuss this application in executive session? Yes, okay. We're going to briefly recess, and we'll be back. Thank you.
I know it's not, we're not asking for a variance.
Yeah, that's all I think.
Did he actually close testimony? What?
Well, these are more informal, I don't think you actually said it. No.
Yeah, I know. Is Chris Hartman always been the solicitor
Well,
for
for
the
the
zoning?
last 2 years, last year and a half, yeah.
Do you do other zoning hearing boards like in Brooks County?
I don't go to work, I really don't in Chester.
Okay.
This is the furthest, this is all for me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This is East Hartman, really outside of Kent, Harlow, actually in Delaware.
Wow.
I have a lot of attention to it.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when I go and accept the second.
Chairman asked it.
Yeah, it was last year, I mean, a couple years ago. I told you on the house, and again, the meetings I was asking for, to go with this for, zoning variance. How big is your current base? Four thousand staff. Other machines.
Okay, we're gonna go back on the record, and, the zoning hearing board had some discussion about the Esh application in executive session, and based on that discussion, I'm gonna make a recommendation to the board of a potential motion that the board could make. And that recommendation would be to grant the 2 variances that were requested, and to be very specific about what those variances are. This would be a variance to allow buildings to be up to 5,384 square feet, which would be 384 square feet greater than what is permitted under the zoning ordinance for this type of use, and to allow an additional 0.5% of lot coverage. That would be to go up to 5.5% from the cap of 5% that's otherwise applicable in the zoning ordinance, and that those variances would be conditioned upon the applicant obtaining any necessary permits and approvals from the township or other agencies to develop the buildings and use on the property, to comply with all township ordinances and regulations, except as modified by the decision granted tonight, to use the property in accordance with the testimony that was received from the applicant tonight, that the compliance with township ordinances and regulations would noise for this type of use in the township, and that the applicant is to be advised of the requirement to keep the property size intact so long as the use of the property is the rural occupation use, which requires at least 15 acres in order to have a 5,000 square foot building. So that would be the proposed motion. Motion to approve.
I'll second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
All right, thank you. I think I had omitted to the statement that we were accepting exhibits, which are all board exhibits, so I think we're good with that. And the Township Zoning Hearing Board has a duty to issue its written decision within 45 days of tonight's hearing. And after that written decision is issued, the applicant would have 30 days to appeal that decision if it was unhappy, and that appeal would be to the Chester County Court of Common Pleas. Mr. Esh or Mr. Williamson, do you have any questions?
No, no.
All right, thank you very much. So that concludes our second hearing tonight. And again, I want to thank everybody for their patience. And we are now moving on to our third application. And this is the application of the Chester County Solid Waste Authority. And as with our other applications, I have some housekeeping to do first, and that is to announce that this is the place and time designated by notice to consider the application of the Chester County Solid Waste Authority for variances from sections 27-1903A2 and 27-1903A4 of the Honeybrook Township zoning ordinance as amended to permit the construction of a booster pump station, driveway access, vehicle turnaround, and a stormwater management facility when the proposed lot area of the use is less than 2 acres and the use is proposed to be within the 50-foot property line setback. The property which is subject to the application for the above variances is located at the corner of Route 322 and Reservoir Road, being tax parcel number 22-3-11.1A93. Property is located in the Business Industrial BI zoning district of Honeybrook Township. This is the time in the hearing where I ask who wants to be a party. I see some representatives for the applicant here. Do you wish to enter an appearance at this time?
Yes, good evening, board. My name is Melissa Reichstetter. I'm an attorney with Lamb Macmillan, who serves as legal counsel for the solid waste authority.
Thank you very much. And the township is always a party to this hearing. Is there any other person present here tonight who wishes to be recognized by the township as a party? Party status would give you the right to call witnesses and to appeal the decision of the zoning hearing board. I'm looking around the room and I see no indication that there's any person present who wishes to be a party to this proceeding, so the applicant will be the only party here presenting testimony tonight. Anyone who wishes to offer evidence will be asked to either swear or affirm their testimony. Public notice of this hearing was duly advertised in the Daily Local on February 6 and February 13, 2024. Adjoining property owners were notified by mail of this hearing on February 5, 2024. Notice of this hearing was posted on the property by Ted Nelson, zoning officer, on February 14, 2024. At this time, the board offers following exhibits, which were already marked to be entered in the record. Exhibit 1 is the application of the Chester County Solid Waste Authority for the property located at the corner of Route 322 and Reservoir Road, Honeybrook Township, Chester County, Pennsylvania. Exhibit number 2 is a notice of tonight's hearing. Exhibit 3 is a proof of publication of the notice of tonight's hearing in the Daily Local. Exhibit 4 is an affidavit of the service by mail of the notice for those persons who received notice by mail. Exhibit 5 is an affidavit of the posting of the notice of tonight's hearing on the property. Exhibit 6 is a letter of the Board of Supervisors of Honeybrook Township dated February 15, 2024, taking the position of support on the variance request. And Exhibit 7 will be the Honeybrook Township zoning ordinance as amended. Are there any objections to any of these exhibits?
Okay.
Thank you very much. This time, I'm going to ask you to call your witness and allow your witness to be sworn or affirm his testimony and then proceed.
Absolutely. I brought with me a representative of the Chester County Solid Waste Authority, Christopher Toes, P.E.
Ready to spell his last name?
Last name's Taves, it's spelled T-O-E-V-S.
The testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Perfect. Hello, board. In the interest of time, I know we've been here for quite some time. I will give a very brief summary as to what has been going on with the booster pump station. This booster pump station was purchased, it's a half acre of land that was purchased from the King property. We purchased that back in August 2nd of 2023. That property, as I said, is about a half acre. The only improvements that the Solid Waste Authority intends to build will be the booster pump station itself, which will serve the water extension line. That water extension line will serve Brook Township residents and businesses. It is also our intention and Honeybrook Borough Authority's intention that this booster pump station will be dedicated to Honeybrook Borough Authority. And I would like to submit that letter into evidence as applicant 1.
Thank you.
This is a letter of support from the Honeybrook Borough Authority. So this letter is from the Honeybrook Borough Authority. This letter basically states a summary of what I just gave you, and it also shows their intention to accept dedication of this booster pump station. So of course, we're looking for 2 variances tonight. The acreage on the property, as I've said a few times now, is 0.5 acres. The minimum lot size is 2 acres. We felt that 2 acres would be way too large for this size property. There was no need to take that much land from the King property. They're a family with relationships there, and we felt that that was unnecessary. The remainder of that 1.5, if we were to take 2 acres, would essentially be nothing. So we felt that 0.5 acres gave us enough land for the booster pump station, a driveway, and any stormwater improvements that we needed to make. The second variance that we're looking for is a variance from setbacks. Those setbacks would actually only be in 2 locations. It's the right side yard and the rear yard. Those would be the only variances we would need. The other 2 yards can fly. We are both here to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, the first question is, why is Chester County Solid Waste Authority building this facility for the Honeyport Road Authority?
So this project is 10+ years in the making, long before I started at Chester County Solid Waste Authority. The original interest of the project was to supply public water, treated water to the facility at the landfill at 722 Division Highway. In that effort, since we are a public municipal authority, we wanted to expand that mission to also provide clean, publicly treated water to residents, businesses along US 322 in order to get to our business at 7224 Division Highway. So the purpose is to provide clean water to our commercial office building, but also to provide clean water to other residents as well.
There is a statement about screening somewhere.
The evergreen trees outside the fence.
Yeah, where did that come from?
I believe it was in the application submitted by Aaron.
Okay.
So it was the Solid Waste Authority's intention to put up a fence around the booster pump station. However, they felt that they wanted to cover that fence with evergreens so it wouldn't be seen from the road.
Okay, so would the evergreens be inside or outside the fence?
I believe they would be outside the fence.
Okay, I found it in the technical letter, Jim, I didn't see it right away, but it says, provided evergreen screening is planted along the fence line. So, again, to clarify, will there be a fence on all 4 sides of the facility?
Yes, there will be a fence on all 4 sides, and that's consistent of other booster pump stations that are owned and operated by the Honeyport Water Authority.
And the plan that was submitted, I don't believe that, oh, it does. It shows the fencing around the pump station. So it doesn't go around the perimeter of the property, it only goes around the pump station itself. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so, again, because I think I was reading when you said where the evergreens would be, it'd be on the outside of the fence, is that
I
correct?
believe it'd be outside.
Okay. All right. Because when I read that, I was concerned about the evergreens affecting the visibility of the intersection. But where the pump station is located, the trees will be far enough away from the intersection that they shouldn't have any impact on the clear sight at the intersection. Is that correct?
That is correct. At the intersection, visual line of sight as required by PennDOT would not be hindered by the evergreens.
Okay. Do you need an HOP for this driveway? No, it's probably on a township road, isn't it?
It's on township roads, we did not need an HOP. Now, when we go for construction for the public water line, we will need an HOP for the construction activities.
Okay.
That has not been applied for at this point.
But not for the driveway for the pump station?
Do you hold ownership of this always, or you turn it over to the borough?
It is our intention to dedicate this to the borough, so that way they would take ownership of it and maintain it after we dedicate it to them.
And how long is that, like, what's that process?
We are still working out the intermunicipal agreement with the Honeyport Water Authority. Our initial thing is that it'd be about 5 years, that we would have shared maintenance agreement on the property, but it'd be no longer than that.
You already own the property at this time, is that correct? was there a subdivision process to that, or was there some, I'm curious how you got the lot, if that went through the township, or if that was a condemnation process that might have avoided that, I'm just curious. Do you have any recollection or knowledge of that? If there was a subdivision process to create that lot or not?
I believe that the executive director, Robert Watts, approached Amos King, the owner of the property, about subdividing the property. I think the details were worked out between them. And then I don't believe that there was any formal subdivision that was done with the property.
Hypothetically, that could be part of what you still need to deal with in the township. Anyway, I don't think we don't need to answer those questions, but I'm a little curious about
I thought that.
your application indicates that you're already the owner, but the plan, it's not clear to me that this lot is already subdivided. So it seems to me that you might still need to go through that subdivision process unless there's some way to avoid that, this subdivision land development ordinance of the township.
I believe a part of the sale agreement that there was a requirement that we need to put an application into the township for a zoning variance. Once that application was submitted, then the sale agreement was executed. That I think was the application.
Sure, so I think just to clarify that there, the agreement conditions are still being satisfied. This is a something to satisfy the agreement, which is why it's a little bit of an odd.
Yeah, because I didn't, I'm just trying to reconcile what we're talking about here with what I see in the application. And, what I suspect is that King's probably still the legal owner of the lot at this point. But if you have a signed agreement, that's good enough for you to present an application to the zoning hearing board. And is your testimony that you have a signed agreement with King?
I have it with me,
Yes,
if
you
you'd
do
like
have
to see
it.
it.
All
I'm
right.
more than happy to provide it. I do have one copy,
Well,
but I am more than happy to provide it.
I think it would be appropriate to put that in the record and to ensure that, we know that King has authorized you to be here.
Sure. So we're happy to submit that as application.
Is there noise emitted from when this is up and running? Like, I don't know anything about pump stations, I wasn't, sure at public water school.
So the water pumps that will be pressurizing the water line will be in the enclosed building, so you will not be able to hear those water pumps from outside the building. There will be an emergency generator that will be located outside the building, but within the perimeter fence and within the evergreen fencing that will be surrounding the building. So there may be some noises that may come from the emergency generator, but
How often does that go off? The generator goes off once a week or once a month?
that's really whenever we lose power at the facility.
I thought it was just that maintenance goes on, once a month.
I would anticipate there would be some regular maintenance that would need it to start.
Yeah, usually those backup generators go on for 5 or 10 minutes every week. So I'm not testifying, but it's my experience. Okay.
Just to add, this is also not a facility that we would have constant traffic coming in and out. There's one individual that would be there occasionally, there's not an office inside, so there wasn't really concern about traffic in and out either. However, the driveway does satisfy all the township requirements.
And there's no residential behind it anyway, it's commercial, it's light industrial or something.
There's no residential neighbors.
Right.
Do you know how King is going to use the property around the pump station?
I can tell you what it's used for now. It is a horse pasture.
There's goats in there.
I don't know, but yes, it's pasture.
Because right now, there is a perimeter fence around the pasture, and your pump station is inside that fence. That's what it looks like on the plan. Is that
That's correct.
accurate? Okay. But is the pasture fence going to be modified if this project goes forward?
I think so.
With regard to the variances that are requested, I note, looking at the plan, that there is a stream that is close to the proposed lot boundary. Does that stream inhibit the ability to use an area of a larger lot, or to create a larger lot that would be useful for this or any other use on the property?
I don't believe it would necessarily be that the lot would need to be bigger, it's our setback concerns. The building's not able to be moved any further because there is a riparian buffer there, and there is a creek as well, so the building has to be in the position that it is.
The point I'm trying to make is there's a larger lot area required by the ordinance. So one of the variances is on the lot area. So there is, I think, a physical constraint resulting from that creek that means that if you had a larger lot, it wouldn't really add any usable land because of that riparian area and the creek itself. Is that true? Do you agree with that?
Absolutely agree with that.
Are there wetlands also within that pasture area? I mean, I'm looking at,
We did have a wetland study done on the property, and the consultant came to the conclusion that no wetlands would be inhabited by the construction of the building.
I agree that where you have your location of your building, there doesn't appear to be anything, but I don't know if you have any knowledge about the areas that are further to the west of your proposed lot. And again, the reason I'm raising this is because of the lot area variance that's being requested, that if you were to have a larger lot, that there's the creek, riparian area, but there might also be wetlands. But you don't have specific knowledge about whether this area to the west of the creek is, whether that's wetlands or not? You didn't have that evaluated for wetlands?
I don't have any specific knowledge on that. To be honest, looking at it, the riparian buffer it's a pretty barren stream bed that really goes up after heavy rainfalls. It's not like a little concept that was it's a very small stream.
Okay, but isn't it true that there is a 100-year floodplain shown on the plan? Does that include some of that area to the west of your proposed lot? It actually includes, isn't it true that the southwest corner of your proposed lot is within the 100-year floodplain?
That's correct.
Any questions from the board about this application?
I think to add something to consider is the solid waste authority could have gone through this and gotten an easement from the property owner and built things without having to come to the township. They felt it was necessary to make sure the township had seen everything and all the requirements, made sure we got all proper approvals. So that's why this size lot was purchased. It could have been an easement, but we felt it was necessary to purchase it and make sure the township got the approval on everything.
I appreciate that, thank you. Do you know if the Honeybrook Borough Authority has similar facilities in other locations in Honeybrook Township? Do you have any knowledge of that?
Yes, I believe that they have 3 other locations of booster pump stations of differing sizes. Typically brick buildings with perimeter fences around them. One of them is located in a horse pasture just to the north of Honeybrook Borough. I remember going to visit it, and the workers were pretty adamant that the gates needed to be shut, otherwise the horses would get in and damage the vehicles. So this is not the first of its kind. It is just it's within similar conditions to what already exists.
Very good. Just to clarify, would this be a brick building also? Okay. And would the driveway be paved?
The driveway would be big. Yeah.
like to say about this? All right. With that, we're going to accept all the board exhibits as well as applicant 1 and applicant 2. And does the board wish to have another brief executive session or something? Okay. What I was thinking of recommending, and I'll share that with you now, would be a potential motion to approve the 2 variances that were granted with regard to the lot size and the 2 setbacks as to the right side yard and the rear yard only. And those would be conditioned upon installation and maintenance of fence and evergreen screening around the fence, getting all required permits and approvals, complying with township ordinances and regulations except as modified by this decision, and that the use would proceed in accordance with the testimony. Is there anything the board would want to add to that? Make a motion to approve?
Second motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, as you've heard me say with the other applications, the board has 45 days to write a written decision. If you're dissatisfied with the written decision, you have the right to appeal to the Chester County Court of Common Pleas within 30 days of the issuance of the written decision. Do you have any questions?
No.
No, I just wanted to say thank you all for your time.
All right, well, it sounds like this
Thank
has
you.
been a long time in the works, so good luck with your project.
Perfect, thank you all.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Didn't answer any great, but we did take a couple of breaks.
I got 10 minutes to wait, so.
I don't think we need any transcripts at this point, but if we do, I'll let you know. So no further things. Thank you. I'm going to go acknowledge any other applications, so we have time for a while.
Where did you get the next number?
All
I
right.
can do it. You're thinking the other one, he's not on the board.
I
Yeah,
have,
cross country.
you know, that's the thing.
We just got to approve